So as we get started here, I just want to say first off welcome. Thank you for joining us today. There might be some folks that float in the next couple of minutes, but it's good to see your faces. We are recording this, hearing your voices throughout. This will be probably a little bit more than an hour, so we appreciate your time and your interest as we we've got something to share with you, and DP always does a great job of articulating the information. I guess for me, I want to just kick it off by saying that I hope that you and your family and loved ones are all safe, and that's really, when we think about it, the most important thing. So I do hope that you're navigating this as best as you can, and as I said, we appreciate you jumping on here. What I'd like to do is just kind of start off by framing what we've been doing broadly as of late. And so in the last number of years, we've really shaped and honed our business to really impact three areas of the market. So think of these as three prongs to our business. The first one, of course, is fitness, and that's where we do education, solutions, programming. The next one is in what we might call human performance. And so for sports, that might mean, a young person trying to make it to the next level, or someone who is a fitness enthusiast trying to reach a competitive level within their own sphere of participation. And then the last one might be, the executive or the individual that just wants to live a life that challenges themselves to a greater degree. That could be executive performance or whatever it might be. So that would be high performance. That's where a person takes much more of a pointed strategy in how to kind of eliminate disruptors and increase promoters and try to live maximally in terms of whatever they want to do. And of course, the last one for us is in the health domain. And this is not necessarily in primary health, but it does touch primary health in the sense that we're looking at prevention strategies. We're looking at health coaching. We're looking at the idea of putting more life or lifespan into a person's, or health span rather, into a person's lifespan. So this idea of health is really about how we can delay and offset malady. So these three prongs of our business to us are really the same thing. We really look at how to view programming, education, science, and theory, and how to package that into an applied methodology. And so over the course of the last number of years, we've been working on an operating system. We've been working on logic. We've been communicating this logic to different companies, technology companies, different private sector companies, in an attempt to try to be the default operating system as it relates to two things: health and human performance. And I think taking the fitness analogy is probably most apt here, is that in fitness, a lot of times it's looked at as, I want to achieve a goal in some degree of time. And that goal is typically a performance or an aesthetic goal, which is totally fine. And a lot of times what we look at as we program or think about this is that goal and the effects of either the science or the programming on that goal itself, not necessarily the long term. And so understanding, of course, that exercise itself is a stressor, and the dose response of exercise can be a cumulative stressor, and understanding that a lot of athletes are not necessarily healthy. We always look at the science and the theory and the application on this idea of fitness does not necessarily equal health. It might, but not necessarily. And so if we look at both of those things of human performance, whatever that may be, it might be, we're reaching the next level as a youngster. It may be at 87, I still want to live independently at home. Whatever that human performance is, we want to equally index that with health. So for us, what we're doing and what we are as a company is an applied health and human performance company. And what that means is, as it relates to programming, as it relates to science, as it relates to strategy, as it relates to an operating system, for those that are familiar with 4Q, we've got 3 of them. And even as it relates to future proofing, where the worlds of health and fitness and overall performance are going, we want to unveil to you some of that thinking today. And we want to take about an hour to kind of walk you through what we're doing and who we're communicating that to beyond just fitness, in order for us to glean some information as to where this future might take us. And unfortunately, the circumstances right now have accelerated our efforts into doing what we're doing right now, which is a virtual space. And so telemedicine, for those that have seen a doctor in the last few months, is a much more accommodating thing for folks. Telecoaching is a much more accommodating thing for folks. And so we're going to touch on these elements of fitness, performance, and health in the same conversation as we unveil kind of our logic to programming, our logic to education, and then our logic to an operating system that allows individuals to think about and then prescribe and coach various forms of programs. So that's really what we are doing right now, and we're blessed that we've communicated this to all sectors of the industry, meaning fitness, meaning healthcare, and also the private and public sectors of the business space. And so we're pretty excited about this. Actually, we're pretty excited about communicating this information to you. We've done these webinars a couple of weeks ago. We're doing another one this afternoon, and it gives us great pleasure to be able to lean in and for those that have gone through our education, to be able to articulate what we are doing next. So before I hand it over to Derek, I just want to open it up. I know you guys are muted, so I appreciate that. Open it up if you have any quick questions on what we're doing as a business. Then I can answer that. If not, I can just turn it over to DP. So does anybody have any quick thoughts or questions at this point? All right, DP, I guess what you might do is screen share and then walk us through what we have here.
Got it. So as I do this, as I go through this kind of curriculum, if you will, this slide deck that I have for you, if you have questions, I will stop periodically to allow you to answer or to ask some questions. Just because there's a lot of talking heads here. I appreciate that staying muted right now is good. If you'd like to turn off your camera in case you're having some visual issues, some data issues, feel free to turn off your camera for now. That's totally okay. I won't be able to see anything on your end. All I can see is my slide deck presentation. So if you're trying to communicate with me via text or something like that, I won't be able to see it. So with that being said, there's three things that I want to share with you here. One, I want to kind of shed some insight in terms of our programming operating system. For those that have been to our previous mentorships or our programming summit, you're going to see a lot of familiarities, is that how you say it, along the way here. But at the same time, what we've done over the last couple of years is really fine-tune this to create a very logical programming system. So I'm going to walk you through that. And then from there, what I'm going to share with you is some insight, kind of a sneak preview of our program builder, which essentially takes this logic of programming and gives us a tangible product that we can use with our clients. And then from there, I want to share with you guys a new program that we've created called the Applied Health and Human Performance Specialist Program. And I'm going to walk you through some of the details on that and even share with you guys a discount. So with that being said, let's start with this ethos that Michelle touched upon, which is the idea that when we program design, yes, we want to program for your specific goals, whether they're fitness-based, whether they're performance-based, but we also want to consider the health aspect of this endeavor as well, because what we want is for our clients to achieve what they want and to be able to sustain that for as long as they want it. And so whatever it is that you want, I want that for you. And let's try to create something to where it's a sustainable model of both your goals and health along the way. And so in order to do that, when we get into program design, as we know, a program is a series of sessions. And these sessions can be made up of all kinds of different, strategies. And so what we want to do is give you some detail as to what this logic looks like. So if we're going to start to then build a session, think of this as a decision tree that one would navigate when creating something for their client. And so for us, the very first kind of decision we need to make when creating a session for a client, whether it's right on the spot, we're going to deliver a session for them, or we pre-plan this, is to really figure out, is today's session a workout or a work in? In other words, is it a bout of stress that we're going to embark upon, or is it a bout of recovery to help offset some of the stresses that this individual is experiencing? And what's important about this that I think is pretty unique in our industry and is relatively new is the fact that as a practitioner in this space, for the longest, all we've focused on, and really what a lot of people have looked towards us for, is the idea of giving them a workout. And that's obviously going to be still important in terms of helping people achieve their specific goals. But equally as important is we need to be considering the aspect of delivering a recovery-based session for people and be able to sell that and deliver that type of an experience for somebody as well. And so we'll get into a little bit of what that looks like. So imagine if these are two buttons on your screen. The button on your left says workout, and the one on your right says work in. So imagine we click on workout. From there, we've got kind of a couple of decisions to make in terms of the type of workout that we're going to do. Is today's workout, is it a mechanically focused workout, or is it a metabolically focused workout? Or if you like to do a kind of a combination where you're considering both, you can definitely do that. I mean, every session that we do that is exercise-based, that is a stressor to the system, it stresses our mechanical system, i.e. it stresses the nervous system, it stresses our tissues, i.e. muscle and fascia, it stresses our joints. So that's kind of what a mechanically focused workout would do, versus a metabolically focused workout focuses on our metabolism, our energy system development. And so with every session that we do, there's always a mechanical and a metabolic influence. But if we like to kind of focus on one and direct our programming and thought around that, we can definitely do that. And so if, again, these are two buttons on your screen, if we go down this decision tree and say, all right, well, let's create a mechanical workout today, that's going to look something like this, where we're going to consider 6 themes or 6 flavors of the day, if you will, and see how these particular themes will be integrated within our workout. And these are always considerations. These are not must-haves, but we're going to consider these 6 themes. There's activation, mobility, cardio, strength, power, and regen. And a lot of some of the curriculum that we've created around this programming structure goes into the meat and potatoes and the details of how we would go about organizing our thought in terms of which ones we select. But just to kind of give us an overarching idea of what this looks like, we know that in every session that we do, there's always a warm-up. And in that warm-up, we take those 6 themes and say, you know what, we only need to focus really on 3 or consider 3. We'd probably do some sort of activation sequences, especially for healthy individuals, where we're just going to prime their neuromuscular system, improve their fluid dynamics. For individuals that, let's say, they're lacking space in their body or lacking control of that space, we might consider more mobility-based strategies. And then for elevating one's heart rate away from resting heart rate and improving circulation, well, cardiovascular strategies are going to be as important as well. So we might integrate all 3 within a warm-up, or if we're strapped for time, we might just focus on one of these elements. But we're going to have these 3 as a consideration when we develop a warm-up. So if we were to go down the rabbit hole of saying, well, if we're going to go activation, what does that look like? What we're going to share with you guys in our education around programming is a 4-step process that how you can basically prime the body to be able to accept and tolerate force better. And so that way they're able to perform better within their given either sport or in the gym, wherever they're going to be exercising or moving their body. And so not to walk you through in great detail what this looks like, but imagine if we started with improving your fluid dynamics, and then we did some small motor unit recruitment that was both slow as well as rapid, because it's important not just to turn on muscles, but for those that have gone through our education before, you guys know that it's also important that we get muscles to turn off at the appropriate time to enhance joint mechanics. And then also be able to stimulate various, proprioceptors, the ocular motor system, the vestibular system, so that way we get better information coming to our nervous system, so that way it can make better decisions. So, to go through all these videos would take some time. So just to give you guys an understanding that, in our education, we'll go through in greater detail what this looks like. But what's unique is that we've got a 4-step process that we can use with just about any client, and we'll learn more about these strategies. From a mobility perspective, we would typically consider this for those individuals that, let's say we do some sort of an assessment, we identify, you know, there's some movement abilities that have been lost, or there's less, you can tell there's less space in this individual's body. And so based off of that, that might determine, you know, the type of protocol we would do to help foster greater mobility in our clients' bodies. And so with that being said, this is where our 4Q model lives. And so if you know, if you've been through our education, this will look very familiar to you. We would bring this out as a means to be able to foster the idea of variable stress into our clients' bodies. And so if you haven't seen our 4Q before, let me walk you through it really, really quick. It's composed of basically kind of two axes here. The vertical one takes a look at the difference between load-based training, or basically moving or carrying some sort of an external mass, versus body weight-based training, which is what we call unloaded, which is what the U stands for. So you've got body weight-based exercise and load-based exercise. For those that have been programming and exercising people for many years, if you're a veteran in this industry, you know that there's a big difference between body weight-based exercise and load-based exercise. And not that one is easier or harder than the other. They just provide different biomechanical stresses. So as an example, right, a pull-up for most individuals now that are living in our societies, many people can't even do a pull-up. That is a body weight-based exercise. And so, you know, just because an exercise is body weight doesn't mean it's easy, or doesn't mean it can't introduce a high level of force. And so for us, it's just a continuum to consider that if we're going to develop, let's say, strength with somebody or power, we would want to consider developing strength and power on both ends of that spectrum and everywhere in between to help ladder up and optimize that person's bodies and their abilities. And then the horizontal continuum takes a look at the difference between basically linear-based exercise and multiplanar-based exercise. So linear exercise is exercise that is essentially where the body's not really going anywhere, or if it does move, it's only moving in the sagittal plane. So a lot of your classic exercises that we do in the gym, the torso and the pelvis don't really move, or if it does move, it kind of moves in unison up and down, or it stays relatively static while the limbs move. Those are all kind of linear-based exercises. And what we find is that if you go take a look at the Instagram workout of the day, most exercises that people are doing, they're actually living on the linear side of our 4Q model. And so what we said is that for human performance, but also for human health, that we need to expose the nervous system and their tissues to variable directionality of stress, that we can't just stress the body in the same kind of plane over and over and over again. It becomes important that we stress their body, or at least ladder them up as a progression to be able to tolerate and accept and move well in a multiplanar fashion. And so when you combine these two axes, you create 4 quadrants. So the upper left is called loaded linear-based training. Loaded linear training, as it sounds, you're moving load in the sagittal plane. So that's like your classic bodybuilding, bench press. You've got a barbell on your back and you're doing squats. Versus unloaded linear training, well, that's body weight-based exercise that is linear. So like your push-ups and your pull-ups or going for a run, that lives down in the lower left. The lower right is now multiplanar body weight-based exercise. That's where you're kind of moving more athletic, you know, agility-based drills, or you can take your same push-up, but you make it more dynamic, where you have to kind of rotate or move in the frontal plane to execute it. Those types of versions of a push-up would live in the unloaded multiplanar quadrant. And then loaded multiplanar training, or what we've called in the past loaded movement training, is essentially just that. You're moving load in a multiplanar fashion, so in a very dynamic way. And for human health and for human performance, when we program design exercises, we always think of this 4Q model as a way to try to integrate these variable types of exercise or stress into the body. And so for our example around mobility, and let's say we were to tackle hip mobility, we were going to use this 4 quadrants in a scheme where maybe our first exercise might start in the lower left. We'll do an unloaded linear-based exercise. We've got our buddy Johnny here, who's just doing this kind of in and out prisoner hip flexor stretch to help put some tension into the anterior compartment, maybe to help counteract some of the sitting that this individual might be doing on a daily basis. And then our next exercise is to feed that hip complex more multiplanar stress in an unloaded environment. And so what I'm doing here is essentially I'm driving my pelvis laterally as I execute this half kneeling lateral frog. So now I'm introducing stress into the pelvis and hip in a much different direction, which is going to feed the tissues and the nervous system different information, different stress that my body is going to have to organize itself around. So that will promote, ideally, greater mobility now in the frontal plane. And then from there, we can go and execute an exercise. Perhaps in this case, we've got a band distraction technique for the hip. You can't really see it very well because it's just a black band, but there's a rubber band right here wrapped around Johnny's thigh. And as he drives his pelvis to the side, to the left, this band with a lot of tension is distracting or pulling on his hip in the opposite direction. So a great mechanism to feed mobility into the hip. And that would be a load-based drill because of that resistance band, puts a lot of tension into the body. And then from here, you've got Trevor doing basically a dumbbell step back with an overhead reach, which is a great finisher to this because now we're in a standing environment, we're decoupling the hips, we're sending more tension into the anterior compartment. And so this variable kind of approach to creating and fostering hip mobility, this could be 4 strategies that we might consider for somebody that would ladder up into greater mobility for the hips. So with that being said, this is something that we consider as a part of, let's say, making somebody move better. Are there any questions at this point in terms of what I've walked you guys through? So if make sure to unmute yourself if you do have a question. Otherwise, silence is golden, and I'm going to move on to our next section, which is strength. And so now we're considering, how do I develop the meat and potatoes of the workout, where this is the main adaptations that we want with our client, that they want for their goals. And really what it comes down to is there's 3 forms of mechanical stress that we're going to consider to help that person get to their goal. It's strength, power, and cardio. It's that simple. It's strength, power, and cardio. But as you guys know, there's lots of different types of strength. There's lots of different types of power and ways in which we do cardio to help elicit that. So to give you guys a flavor for our decision tree around, okay, the person needs strength, let's say for their specific goal. Well, what type of strength are we going to do? Our first decision here is really on the idea of muscle-based strength training or movement-based strength training. And the difference between the two really comes with these definitions. If I'm doing muscle-based strength training, the rules of this game are we're going to do isolated stress into specific regions or muscles. So the way we coach and the type of exercises we select are going to be predicated on that definition. Versus more movement-based strength training, we're talking now whole body integrated training that it's motor task specific. We're not trying to isolate stress into specific regions. We want the whole body to distribute that force evenly and get the whole body to participate to be able to execute that given task. And so you can certainly have a strength training session that has both, but our first decision is to recognize, well, what's relevant for our clients? And so if we decide that the muscle-based approach is relevant for our client, let's say because they've got aesthetic goals, then of course we're going to start to select aesthetic-based exercises and start to stress our client out in that sort of vein, which is very traditional in our industry. So we identify what muscles the client wants to be working on in a session and over the course of many sessions. And then we start to determine, well, what type of strength do we want to promote within those given muscles, whether it's maximal strength, submaximal, is it endurance-based, or is it even hypertrophy? And then based off of that, our recipes around the acute variables will then dictate the type of way in which we're going to develop our session for our client. And what we like about this is this level of organization really creates a structured workout that is very easy to now coach and for the client to understand. Because now there's strong sections within the workout that as we plug in exercises, they're going to map to these particular themes. So if the overall session in this case was a total body hypertrophy program, maybe we split it up to where we got a few exercises dedicated to upper body pushing, upper body pulling, and then strictly lower body. Our 4Q is also baked in here to where we can decide where in our 4 quadrants does our client want to live or need to live in order to achieve their goals. And if the goal is hypertrophy, what we'll recognize is that linear-based exercise is going to be very good for their muscles, but then over time, and what we want to try to consider as well in their warm-up and cool-down is more of a 4Q approach to help balance out that linear-based stress that they're incurring in the meat of their workout. And so it's thought like this that allows us to now create a very pointed discussion with not only our programming, but to our clients, so we can communicate effectively like, hey, this is exactly why we're doing this exercise. So even if the client's like, I don't understand the value of this exercise, I don't know why we're doing it, this really helps create clarity for the client as to, yep, okay, got it. This exercise lives here because it's helping me accomplish, a particular adaptation that I'm asking for based off of my goals. And of course, there's other examples that we can, explore here as well with, such as, maximal based, muscle based training, for the glutes and chest. Or if we do, let's say, a leg endurance workout, in this case, we've got 8 exercises. They're all leg based. You go from glutes to calf raises to hamstrings to kind of more total body leg or whole leg based exercises. You can see how we navigate, linear and multiplanar based exercise, unloaded and loaded, all with the intent of promoting endurance through the legs. This would be a heck of a burner on those legs. And so it's through this decision-making process that really helps us create a pointed session for our clients, so that it creates a lot of buy-in, but we also can then set expectations in terms of the type of adaptations that we should see with our clients. And so with that being said, that's more the muscle-based approach. Our industry is very good at that. I mean, I imagine as I'm walking you through that, you guys are probably like, yeah, I kind of know that stuff already. And so we wanted to say, hey, let's continue thinking that way. That should be a decision tree that we go down, because there's a lot of clients that want that. Where the industry has been going, and for us to create a strong decision tree around strength, is more of a movement-based approach. And so from there, we've got 4 main decisions that we're going to make if we go down this route. So underneath the umbrella of movement-based strength, we have dead strength, odd position strength, agile strength, and relative strength or body weight strength. And so definitions around this, and not to get into too much detail here, but imagine doing dead-based strength, which is essentially exercise that overcome a mass's resting inertia, whether that is an external mass or if it's your own mass. So if you've seen our ground to standing patterns, so you've got yawn here. So a ground to standing pattern is essentially your body is resting on the ground in some sort of posture, and then you got to get out of that posture and transition to a standing posture. We love ground to standing because it fosters both mobility and strength simultaneously. And it's a kind of a necessity. It's an adaptation that we don't want to lose as we age. And sadly, with an environment and a society that is sitting more, these types of strategies we start to take for granted, and we're starting to see people lose this ability. This is a type of dead strength, and it would fall under the premise of movement-based strength training, because there's not one muscle that's doing the job here. There's a lot of muscles that are integrated together to help get somebody get off the ground. And then we might be doing, deadlift and dead shift type strategies, such as this one, where instead of, a barbell on the ground and we're just seeing how heavy of a mass can we pick up off the ground, we might be looking at, okay, that's one great strategy. What about something like this, where I've got to go pick up a mass in a different posture other than neutral, and then I got to be able to have the tissue tolerance and the programming system neurologically to understand how to stabilize myself and transition in and out of such a unique posture. And so that's all under the premise of building dead strength. For odd position strength, I love these images because they really, depict an important need in terms of human health and human performance. Oftentimes we get caught in these types of positions. And if all we do in the gym is train neutral-based postures, well, the chances of our nervous system understanding how to stabilize and get us in and out of these postures effectively are probably going to be missing. The same thing from a tissue tolerance perspective. If we never bend in these ways, when we have to bend in these ways, if we haven't built that tissue tolerance, good chances those tissues break. And so odd position strength training is all about improving those mechanisms, where we're going to produce and sustain force from these uncommon body postures. And we've got to do so safely and effectively. So there's a myriad of different lifts and carries and shifting patterns, warding patterns that we use to help somebody be able to do that effectively. We love this form of strength training, especially for both health and human performance, because we find ourselves so often in these types of positions throughout life. For agile strength, this form of strength training is kind of the polar opposite of muscle-based strength training. Because in muscle-based strength training, a great cue that we use is, hey, you're swinging your arms or you're swinging your body, you're using momentum, stop using momentum, which makes a lot of sense if we're programming muscle-based strength training. We want to try to isolate force in the muscle. We don't want to have a lot of contribution from our connective tissues or our elastic tissues like skin to help us execute that exercise. Well, if we flip this script and say for human motion, we need to be able to harness momentum and create it and sustain it. And that means not only is this a discussion around what muscles are involved, but it's also about our ligaments and tendons, fascia, and skin, all these elastic components of our body, which need to contribute to that form of strength. So this is where swinging mass becomes really important, whether it's our own mass or we're swinging kettlebells, or let's say we're swinging vipers. This is a form of strength training that has started to be integrated in our industry. And now for us, the way we view it is there's a placeholder for it now, where this form of strength training is now relevant because it's not just swinging mass. This is a form of strength that may be very important for a lot of individuals, and we want to consider that as a part of their program. And then relative strength is essentially body weight based strength. So this is where, muscle ups, or you're a rock climber, or you love gymnastics. This form of strength becomes super important for you. We're going to want to program that as well. And so with that being said, we identify from a movement perspective the type of strength that we want to develop with you based off of your goals. And then we go down the decision tree in terms of the type of effort we want to do for the session and for, let's say, a period of time. And then our recipe kind of follows this. So again, what I love about this is it gives us a very detailed and pointed structure to our sessions, where now it's like we're going to do movement-based strength. And hey, you know what? We've got a section that is dedicated to dead strength. And all the exercises that we select in there are now for that particular goal of developing submaximal dead strength. Or let's say I have another section here where it's all about agile strength, but it's all for endurance. And so it's that type of kind of pointed programming that really helps us, the practitioner, understand what the expected adaptations are. It helps us with the decisions in terms of the thousands of exercises that we have up in our head to get, hey, let me get very specific now based off of what my client needs. And it's through that specificity that makes us a really strong coach, because you have such a strong confidence and understanding as to why you selected certain things that you can communicate that effectively for your client to help your client really buy into this. And so this is one example of thousands that we can create. Here's another movement-based strength approach where you've got a section dedicated to odd position strength training that's submaximal, agile strength that is submaximal, relative strength more for endurance. And we can probably come up with some case studies in terms of specific clients that might need this form of strength training. So with that being said, any questions around how we organize strength? I don't want to go, I want to save us a little bit of time here. For power, you get out of my way. For power, we're talking about the rate of force production. There are 6 sub themes here. And so acceleration, decel, agility, plyometric speed, and quickness are all the themes that I might consider developing with a client that needs power in their training because they have power specific goals. And so what you're going to see is that we're going to certainly introduce our 4Q model to all of these different sub themes, because what you start to recognize is that if the definition of acceleration is overcoming inertia as fast as possible, well, we probably need to do that in 4 major ways. I need to do it with my body weight in the sagittal plane. I need to do it, let's say, with a little bit of load. So for example, let's say, we're doing this particular drill here where I'm carrying a mass. I'm in a half kneeling position. I have a mass above my head. I need to accelerate out of that unique position with external load. It's those type of parameters where that exercise fits in loaded linear training, and it's going to give us an authentic response to our ability to accelerate in the sagittal plane. But then we also want to consider multiplanar based acceleration. So an exercise such as a bound, where I'm on one leg and I'm bound and rotate. And my job is not to try to land in perfect form here, because if I try to land with perfect form, I can't accelerate as far. So there's a give and take between acceleration and decel. So in this case, I'm just trying to jump as far as I can, and I kind of land with a rolling effect, because my purpose is not to land and stick my landing. I want to see how far can I explode off of that one leg in the frontal and transverse plane. And then we want to say, all right, that's great. Can we also consider doing this with load as well? So another half kneeling stance, coming out of that and moving into a shuffling based pattern. And so if this is our flavor of acceleration based programming, we're going to do the same thing when it comes to decel, except for decel, we're trying to stop momentum. So now the focus is not just some of the acceleration aspect, but we're going to focus on trying to stop our body in certain positions. And the 4Q is going to help us create a program that has variable deceleration stress to our clients, which then really makes our bodies unbreakable, because now our nervous system and our tissues are learning how to tolerate all these unique demands. The same thing can be said with agility. The same thing can be said with plyometric training, with quickness, with speed. Not to get into the details of all these things, because we're going to get into this within our education. But what we love about this form of programming is, again, it's very pointed, and it really helps us create a very specific program, but yet with a lot of variability that we can bake in along the way. And then the last thing we want to consider for the workout is the cardio element. And if we're talking about the mechanical aspect of cardio, what we want to do is understand the mechanical cardiorespiratory adaptations that occur. So one thing just to highlight here, for example, is the difference between load-based cardio, i.e., like let's say riding a bike or lifting weights, versus going for a run that is just body weight alone. There's a different mechanical stress being placed on the body, especially the heart. With load-based training, there is greater peripheral resistance, right, through the extremities, in this case, the legs, that the heart internally has to pump stronger against that resistance. So what we start to see is that the heart starts to hypertrophy, just like any other muscle, and it starts to enlarge to help the heart create stronger pumps with each and every pump. Now, that's great for cycling, but there could be some mechanical effects long-term that if that's all we ever do, what could end up happening is you create an enlarged heart, but now you've got less chamber space. You're not getting as much blood flow and perhaps oxygen into the body. There could be arterial stiffness that can be created within the body systemically. So something to consider as a part of our cardio-based programming is we're going to consider the mechanical effects. And so perhaps more variability is needed. Now, last but not least is programming a cool down, which is often overlooked. But we're going to start to look at different strategies and integrate these within some of these programs, and we'll discuss this within our education. And so we've created, based off of all this programming logic, we created a couple different things here. One is we created this education where, in order for somebody to understand all these different premises, we felt it was important that we walk people through this in great detail. So that way we have, strong confidence about programming around these various mechanical themes. And then the second thing we created was a program builder where we can have now something tangible to program off of this logic, which I'll share with you in a second. Before I get into the program builder, just to share with you on the workout side that we can also go the metabolic route, are there any questions up to this point on kind of our operating system on program design? Now, I can imagine I'm speaking at kind of a whirlwind speed here and going through these slides at a quick pace. So, don't worry that you have to know any of this right now. But if this is something that kind of geeks you out, this is what we're going to geek out on. This is the kind of information and education that we're going to be able to provide and mentor you guys through in very specific detail. So going back to our decision tree, if we went down the mechanical route, but let's say we do the metabolic route, well, we have a whole different 4Q system that we use that helps infer the type of metabolic conditioning that we're going to do. And not to get into the specificity of here, but what we love about this is it's really breaking the noise in terms of what's been so popular recently over the last 5 years in our industry, especially when it comes to Metcon, is the idea that, HIIT training is the best training ever, and we should all be doing HIIT training. There's so many benefits to the point where people started doing HIIT training. They're doing HIIT training 4 or 5 times a week. And they're like, hey, you know what? This is the best style and the only style that you should really consider. And you should stop doing long duration, steady state based metabolic conditioning because it kills your gains. It's not good for you. It's not as effective, blah, 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 blah. And what's unfortunate about that is more fitness and performance based thinking without considering health. Because what you got to consider is that, yeah, HIIT has a lot of benefits, especially with performance. It does have some benefit towards health. But if that is the only style of conditioning that we do, we not only can overexpose ourselves to the same style of metabolic conditioning, we're going to miss out on various metabolic effects and adaptations that we get from other forms of metabolic programming. And that can actually, that missing those types of benefits can ladder up into, let's say, perhaps even certain metabolic diseases. And so it becomes important for us that we have this variability around metabolic conditioning as we program somebody's metabolic aspect. And so we have a whole logic dedicated to this that is coming into some of our future education that we're going to create. So what we love about this is that every style of workout that you do has a place in this model. So whether you're doing AMRAPs or whether you're doing some sort of 30-30, 60-60 based split, or you're doing some sort of circuit-based training, all the different protocols that are out there, they have a place within our 4Q metabolic model. And then if we decide to, let's say, instead of working somebody out, we're going to build a session that is work-in based, this is where our decision tree starts to identify, okay, are we going to do kind of a recovery session? Are we going to build the whole day of recovery and give somebody an experience that is similar to what a high-level athlete gets, where a whole day is programmed out, where they're doing various strategies mapped out throughout the day that they're doing at home? They might program in a massage with their therapist. Then they're doing some self-care at home. They're doing hot, cold showers. They're having certain nutritional things that they're considering. I mean, we can program all that. And that's something that we might want to consider if we're talking about recovery-based programming. And then we can also make the decision that, you know what, the client needs just a complete day off and not even thinking about their program. We'll allow that to occur. And this is where our 4Q recovery protocol becomes really important when we start to go down this rabbit hole, because it helps us create a very pointed recovery decision in terms of the types of strategies that we want to do. What we're starting to find is that if we always do the same recovery strategy, let's say you love, I don't know, the vibrational rollers, or you love Normatec boots, or you always do a hot cold flush. These strategies are great, especially at first. But if you always do those types of strategies, what we find is, similar to stress, the body acclimates itself to the same type of recovery influence. And so having a variable approach to recovery is something that we would highly want to consider when we're developing a recovery-based protocol. And so with specific programming around this, what's cool is, like, okay, let's say the client has hypertrophy, where we might then take our 4Q recovery model and have very pointed strategies that are going to augment somebody for hypertrophy that might be actually different strategies for somebody who is, let's say, looking to lose weight. So for example, they may need stress relieving based strategies, or they may need more circulation based strategies to help mobilize the free fatty acids that are floating around their body after exercise, or they may need cryotherapy, which has influence towards weight loss. So something to consider here. Same thing for endurance athletes. They're going to have very specific protocols for them. And so for recovery based protocols, this is where we're going to organize our thought and our education, so that way we can ladder up professionals to be able to think with this logic as well. So with that being said, now that we understand how sessions can be created to at least a high level, what we love about this is take a look at this 14-day map where you've got mechanical days, you've got metabolic days, you have recovery-based days, and then, as you know our vernacular, you start to then can pinpoint the types of strategies that you might be doing on specific days. So again, very organized. And what we love about this is just how easy this is to communicate to clients, and for a client to feel like, wow, there's a lot of thought here. I'm being taken care of as a result of, getting engaged with my coach to be able to go through this process. I have a game plan now that, I'm going to get some good coaching, and this game plan has been well thought out specifically for my needs. And so we love this because it also can inform certain data that we can collect that can then inform coaching as well as future programs. So we can then say, hey, you've got a workout, a program that is going to be very linear based for a couple weeks. And then, we can explain as to why that is. But then what we might say, hey, in a couple of weeks, client, because your goal is this, we might dive into more multiplanar based exercise because you've got certain, goals that are going to ladder up into that style of training. So we've got some interesting insight that we can share along those lines. And so we can get super specific if we wanted to. This is a case of Margaret, who's 40. She's a high-level executive. She works 50 hours per week, high levels of stress, lots of factors that influence that we would consider as a result of developing our program. But just to speak overarching to this at a high level is something we would want to consider is gender-specific programming, which if you follow us on Viper Pro, we just launched a 28-day program to this. But the idea is to consider not only the client's goals, but their chemistry, and especially female chemistry, because it changes, quickly if we take a look at it from a week-to-week perspective. And so if we understand the different cycles, the different phases of the menstrual cycle, then that can dictate the type of stress we should be doing and not just, their goals. And so with that being said, during the menstruation phase, this is where we're going to have a heavy dose of recovery. And if we're doing any sort of stress, it's going to probably be some low intensity based exercise. Versus then the follicular phase, higher levels of testosterone, estrogen, energy levels are through the roof. This is where we're going to take advantage. If the client's ready, we can start doing more high intensity based exercise and get them to start moving more dynamically. In the ovulation phase, we might find that in this particular phase, still high levels of estrogen and testosterone, but there's typically lower levels of elastin, which means their connective tissues are less resilient to be able to tolerate multiplanar stress. So what you'll see here is a lot of loaded linear, unloaded linear based exercise programmed because we're considering that as a part of their particular phase that they're in. And then same thing in the luteal phase, where maybe a heavy dose of stress at the beginning of this phase because there's still high levels of testosterone and estrogen, but then quickly that starts to dive off, progesterone starts to increase. We're going to need to promote a lot of recovery in the latter half of this particular phase. And so what we love about this is think about this imagery. If we were able to have imagery that we can deliver to our clients so they can have some visual equity in terms of their experience and why it is that you're programming the way you're programming that is so specific to them, where you can highlight not only where they live within our 4 quadrants, but then quickly identify, hey, in this particular week, look at the dose. We're going to expect that we're going to be doing a lot more exercise and have a specific response within our 4Q model. And then in the 3rd week, hey, guess what? We're going to err more on the side of linear-based exercise. And then in the luteal phase, we might do some more multiplanar-based exercise in a lower volume. So it's this form of visualization where our 4Q model can really shine because, again, it really augments your coaching. And it's not just a programming play, that it actually helps with the communication of why we do the things that we do in the gym to help us achieve what we really want to achieve. So we can do the same thing with metabolic signatures and then our recovery-based strategies as well. So with that being said, are there any questions before I give you guys a quick glimpse of our program builder?
Yeah, Derek, this is Kevin. I have a quick question. Would you be able to define the work in 4Q acronyms, GPR, GAR, etc.?
You got it. So the GPR, so the G and the L, so it goes global and local down below. So global means systemic, that you're doing a recovery strategy that is not specific to any area of the body. It's the whole body is going to be benefiting from that particular strategy. And then the L stands for local, which is like, hey, I've got knee tendonitis. So I'm going to do a recovery strategy specifically for the knee, or a sequence of different strategies for the knee, because that knee needs some extra self-care, if you will. So global versus local. And then the PR or the AR stand for passive recovery or active recovery. So passive recovery means that your body is in a state where you're not putting forth a lot of effort to gain the recovery-based strategy. So let's say You've got, I don't know, Normatec boots on, and you're just chilling in that chair. You're getting this compression that's occurring in your legs, and you're just kind of hanging out. So it's specific to the legs, and you're just passively hanging out. There's no effort to be able to execute and gain benefit of recovery from that. So that would live in the lower left. Versus, let's say, an active recovery strategy. That's where you're now putting forth effort to be able to execute that. So let's say you're doing your favorite mobility exercise for your lower extremity. That would make it an active drill, because you now have to actively engage in that. And there's different recovery benefits and consequences to each, because as you guys can imagine, you know, those days where you just need complete passive recovery because you're so exhausted or you're physically so beat up, the last thing you need to be doing is something active. And so it's just navigating active and passive, global and local, that start to inform the types of recovery strategies that we'll consider. And then we get even more pointed in the education in terms of, okay, what's the client's goal? Well, what types of strategies are ideal for those types of goals? We're going to get into that within the education.
Great. Thank you.
No, that's a good question. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to share a little glimpse of our program builder that we've been working really hard on, that we're really excited about. Still in beta version, but it's getting closer. Give me 2 seconds here. Share my window, program builder. All right. So when you log in, our program builder, it has essentially 4 libraries that you can develop for your whole clientele. And so the idea of having 4 libraries is to help you expedite your programming abilities, because the last thing we want you to do is, have to spend an hour programming. The biggest gain from this is not only to have our 4Q logic baked into our programs and to our program builder, but we want to make programming faster and easier for you. So imagine if you have a library of what we call activities, which are not just exercises, but they're also any sort of activity that can be baked into a session. And so we didn't want to call it exercises, because there are going to be some strategies that are not stress, right? They're maybe recovery-based exercise. And so with that being said, activities would give us a whole library of various strategies. And I think hope my internet's still working. And so you'd have a whole list of various activities that you can select from for the given session that you're trying to do. So that's one library. Another library are working blocks. So imagine you've got a sequence of exercises that you tend to use kind of in a specific order, or at least together. And it's kind of like your favorite sequence of exercises. Well, if you wanted to save that, you can. We call these blocks. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to create a section of a given workout that you can save, and you can plop into anybody's workout or anybody's program. So that way you don't have to recreate that again. So real quick, can you guys hear me? Because the fact that the program builder is offline, I'm wondering if I'm offline.
Yeah, no, we can hear you, DP.
Okay.
It might just simply be that, I don't know if he's working.
I think he is in the middle of working on it. So
we'll walk us through it, and then, kind of.
Yeah, no problem. I do have hopefully the example's still working. But so you can not only save a library of various exercises that work together, you can save an entire session. So that way you don't have to recreate that section for somebody, or you can use a session to, create as a template that you can say, hey, I'm going to use this session. And in this particular session, there's a specific exercise that my client probably doesn't want. So you throw that exercise out, you plug in a new one. And so you can save sessions, and then you can save programs. And so it looks like it's back online. So as a sample program here, you can create programs that are, as many days as you want. You can go as little as a few days to a whole week, or you can create a 30-day program. We're big fans of creating 30-day programs, just because from a periodization perspective, we know things change quite often for a lot of people. So at least having a month of programming can give us an understanding of where we might want to go with somebody, versus trying to program, let's say, 3 months worth, just because it's hard to periodize 3 months because life gets in the way, right? So But you can program 3 months if you wanted to. And so in this case, this is a 7-day program, and it's specific to lower body strength. And as you can see here, based off of our decision tree that we discussed, you can then highlight, hey, today is a workout, and oh, it's lower body strength. I want to focus. It's more of a mechanical based flavor. So you know what, I'm going to save that. And so you can select mechanical, you can select metabolic, or if you want to consider both, you can. If you want the recovery route, then you're selecting that today's a session of recovery. It can be a session and or a day full of recovery. So it's up to you of how you want to go about it. So if I go the mechanical route, I can save that. You can add a description here in terms of what you want to communicate to your client. We can tag your session to various themes. So our activation, mobility, cardio, strength, power, regen, and then the various sub themes that go underneath all that. So if you want to, tag a given workout to, let's say, strength. Okay, it's strength, and then, okay, what type of strength is it? Well, maybe today's session, it's lower body strength. That kind of sounds like it's more probably hypertrophy based. So you can tag it according to that. So that way we understand that that session is dedicated to hypertrophy for anybody that needs to understand that. And then from here, as we get into developing a structure within the session, is we've got this kind of way in which you can create this whole block. So on the left here is a quick overview of what a sequence of exercises is. So we created this block. We titled it Hip Activation Sequence, Loaded Linear and Loaded Movement Training. So it's loaded based hip activation. We've got 5 drills. And so this whole sequence lives down here in the workout block. So we've named it here. We can write a description. We can, if you want to tag it to a metabolic quadrant, we can. So we can tag the whole sequence to a metabolic quadrant if we want. And then we can create a structure to organize the way in which it will appear. So if you want, you've got 5 exercises. In this case, we have it being loaded horizontally, meaning that the goal is to do your self-massage for the glutes, do all the sets and reps recommended for that particular activity, and then you go to the next exercise, runner's hinge, ball, knee drive. You would do all of your sets and reps before moving on to the next exercise. Versus you can change it to circuit, and then that would basically change the order in which it would be distributed to the client. So they would understand that I would go from one exercise, and then I go to the next exercise, I go to the next exercise, etc. Or you can do a superset, triset, a giant set. So we can then create a structure of our working block. And then we go into adding our exercise. We have our whole library here, and our filtering system is going to get stronger. But imagine if you're like, hey, you know what I need? I need an exercise that is, I don't know, let's say it is unloaded linear. I want to maybe have it specific to upper extremity. Just by doing that, you now highlighted exercises that fit within underneath that realm. If I want to say, I need some sort of pushing exercise, then it filters it even more. So these are all of our unloaded linear pushing based exercises. So imagine an elevated push-up, a kneeling push-up, it can help organize this. This process is also going to get fine-tuned as well. So a part of our beta process is we're looking at ways in which you can look at elevated push-up, you'll be able to get a quick visual of what that looks like. So that way, if you want to add it, great, you can add it really quick. So we've got a whole filtration system that uses some of our logic so you can quickly find and filter your exercises. And then you can program sets, you can program time or reps. If you want to add other metrics, you can add you can do intensity, you can do weight, you can do distance. I mean, it really depends on what you want to do. Rest, tempo, all that can be added. If there's an exercise that we have and you don't like the visual representation of it, because of what I'm going to share with you here in a second is what that looks like from a client's view, is if you don't like the video that is populated, you can overwrite it with your own video link and override the exercise if you want to go that route, add any notes that you want. And so with that being said, you can create a whole series of various exercises, link them together as a working block, and then you can save all that. To give you a quick glimpse of what this looks like from a client perspective. So you can send them something like this where it'll have the whole kind of template set out. And if it'll have, they can view this on their phone, they can view this on a desktop, and they're like, oh, runner's hinge ball knee drive. What the heck is that? One set of 10 reps of that. Okay, what does that mean? what'll be populated is, a video of that exercise. And there's lots of ways in which one can do that. Within our library, you guys are going to have an ability to upload your own library if you want. Of course, IoM is going to have its own library that you can feed off of. But if you have exercises that you really love to use, you want to film them and upload them to the program builder as a part of your account, you're going to be able to do that. And so you're going to be able to then create a very kind of brand experience that is, geared towards the way that you like to program. And so this is a great way in which you can deliver an exercise experience for a client. And then as you populate these exercises within the program, what we're going to create is a visualization in terms of the representation of where your program lives within our 4Q models. And so we're in the process of making this more visually kind of, I guess, appealing, because right now it's kind of hard to see. But you can see our 3-4Q models right here. And so imagine if you added, let's say, another linear-based exercise, this brown would turn even a darker shade of brown. Or if you integrated an exercise that was unloaded multiplanar training, the unloaded multi-trainer quadrant would highlight even more. So what's cool is as you're programming, it gives you feedback right away in terms of where things are living within the 4Q. So that way, if you're like, hey, I need to be biased towards one quadrant, well, you can quickly see that you are. Or if you want to create a more well-rounded program, you can get a quick visual representation of that as well. So that is something that we're working on as a part of this as well. So let's see, sample program. So what you can do is you create programs for people. You can then send them a program, and it would look similar to something like this. They're going to get a URL. They click on that, and then they're going to have their whole days kind of mapped out. So day 1, lower body strength. Day 2, I just want you to go for a low intensity walk. Day 3 and 4, don't worry about it. Those are super stressful days. You've got enough things on your mind. Don't worry about those days, but I need you back day 5. We're going to do lower body strength level 1, and then blah, 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 blah. So you can program, and this is kind of what it ends up looking like. They have a calendar that they can go through and organize all this and go through that. They can click on the day to then go through the visual representation of, okay, what do these exercises look like? The acute variables, et cetera. So as we've created this program builder, what's kind of unique is you guys will be the first people to go through this if you opt into our program, and we're going to walk you guys through on how to develop programs using this program builder. So with that being said, are there any thoughts or questions around this? There's going to be a lot of other features that we're adding to this, but just to save us a little bit of time here, because I'm now running over the hour, is there any questions that you guys might have from this?
Will this be in the form of an app for our clients so that they could keep it on their phone, or will it be by email?
Both. So what we've created, and is this Lisa?
It is.
Hi, darling. Great to see you.
How are you?
We've created a web app. So what that means is it's desktop friendly and mobile ready. So so what you can do is you can access it, let's say on your mobile device on Safari or Google Chrome, and it'll organize itself in a way where it feels like an app. And then there's ways in which you can kind of save the link and create an app, save it on as an icon on your phone, and just click on that, and it goes directly to the site. So it's a sneaky way of creating an app for us.
Cool. And can I ask one more just briefly? I've noticed you've changed the line on the metabolic 4Q to purposely change the dosage so it's a lot more effective.
Hey, great eyes. Great eyes. So yeah, so what Lisa's alluding to is our 4Q isn't perfectly symmetrical. It's biased to where basically the continuum is essentially anaerobic versus aerobic based exercise. And as you know, we don't live at 50%. We switch gears. Everybody's different, but most people are in the 60, 70%, right? And so that's why we moved that line up, because we're anaerobic above that percent. Whereas elite athletes, that line would actually represent itself even higher up, because being an elite athlete, you can stay aerobic for longer at higher intensities. And that's part of what conditioning does, right? Is it allows us to use our aerobic metabolism even during high bouts of stress. And so the reason why we've created that visual representation is to understand that we shouldn't be hanging out, metabolically speaking, in all 4 quadrants evenly. Why? We're aerobic beings. We thrive in an aerobic state. If we overdose ourselves in anaerobic-based stress, we will suffer from anaerobic-based consequences. You know, one case, an example is arterial stiffness. You see that in a lot of runners who engage in high intensity, long duration based running, you know, high intensities. They create a stiff arterial wall similar to that of somebody who smokes. And so there's a lot of oxidative stress when you train at that level for long doses or large dosages. So something that we have to consider, and it's why it's biased that way. So cool that you saw that, and we'll get into that in our program. Yeah, thanks. So with that being said, I'm going to dive into our program, if that's cool with everybody. So as a company that is an applied health and human performance company, we basically said, you know what, our education and what we want to deliver to you as a professional is a specialty around that, where you can leave our program as an applied health and human performance specialist, where you understand health and human performance. You understand that continuum. You understand that we can overdose in one and there's a consequence to the other. If you always do health-based exercise or endeavors, well, then you're never going to be able to perform at a high level for a specific endeavor. The opposite is true too, whereas if you're super specific in some sort of endeavor, there could be various consequences to health. We see that in almost all of our athletes, especially as they hit an older age. And so by going through this particular specialization that we've created, the idea is that, you know, you are now a specialist of understanding how to program along that whole continuum, and you understand the balance of health and human performance. And so with that being said, we've got a launch date of this program. It's the week of August 10th. This program is 100% virtual. So understanding the COVID environment that we're living in right now, it'd be too hard for us to kind of gather in, you know, San Diego, for example. It'd be awesome to do that. It's just not reasonable, right? So what we did was we created a whole virtual environment for us to get together in. So it starts the week of August 10th, and it's going to run for 12 weeks. So it basically ends on Halloween. And for level 1, our focus is on mechanical-based programming. So it's our 4Q neuromechanical model that we're going to cover. And when you finish this program, if you pass the exam and you go through the 12 weeks, you become credentialed as an AHHPS level 1. And you can add that to your career, which is kind of cool because, you know, that's something that can be communicated to a client. It can be something that can be communicated to your peers, or let's say you're looking for a job. You can say that you went through a specialization versus, you know, it's cool that you can, hey, I went to an IoM mentorship. Doesn't really mean a whole lot to outsiders unless you're a part of the community. And so we felt it was important to help you in your career to actually give you that specialization. And so that is essentially the acronym that one can achieve by going through this. So what do you get as a result of this 12-week program? You get a new course that we're just launching with. It's called 4Q Foundations, and it basically walks you through our 7-chapter course on how to program mechanical-based programming. With this, we just applied for and received 10 hours of continuing education to ACE, NASM, AFA, NSCA, and PTA Global. So if there's an organization that doesn't fit here that you need, you can simply, we can probably give you the information that you can use to petition for that. But as a result of going through this, you get 10 hours of CECs as a result of finishing this education. Now, aside from education, what we also wanted to do is give you a tangible product that you can use with your clients or even use for yourself. So we're going to give you free access to the program builder. You're going to get your own account. You can create your own programs. You can leverage what we have on the IoM side of things, but you can create your own kind of experience for your clients because you're certainly the expert when it comes to working with your clients. But you can use our program builder to do so, and we're going to walk you through how to do that as a part of this 12-week process. So to do that, one way in which we're going to meet is every week we'll meet in a virtual environment just like this. It's probably going to be through Zoom, and we're going to meet every Thursday. There's going to be a morning session and an afternoon session, respecting the fact that this is a global program, we've got people in the UK, Australia, Asia. So we're going to have 2 sessions. You only need to attend one. And let's say you're just too busy at those particular times, which is, hey, good on you. You can always view that session in a recorded fashion. The only thing that you don't get from that is obviously to be able to ask questions in real time. And so that is an added benefit of this program, is you can view these webinars that we will hold weekly. And what we're going to do is walk through a curriculum with you to make sure that you're staying on top of the education, that you're also learning how to program on the program builder and giving you some insight on how to do that, address frequently asked questions, and ways in which we can critique programs. What we love about this is it gives us an opportunity to vet programs. Hey, I got this idea on programs. What do you guys think about this? Or, you know what, I created this program and here's how I'm justifying it. And when we share best practices, we are now starting to think kind of like, you know, how we respect doctors and how they think. So, you know, cardiovascular surgeons, they get together on periodically to be able to share best practices. Like, hey, you know, there's this new surgery and this is kind of how I've been going about it. They don't try to hide and do it exclusively just for themselves. We should be doing the same thing in our industry. So this creates a cool community to where we can share best practices. So aside from a weekly meeting, we're going to have a discussion forum that we can meet, you know, online whenever it is easy for you to communicate. And you can share your programming ideas, exercise selection. You can ask questions specific to the curriculum, and it's just a great peer-to-peer as well as peer-to-IoM based environment where there's just lots of learning that can be done. And of course, the more you're engaged in the discussion forum, the greater the questions, the better experience it is for everybody. So we're going to have a discussion forum, you know, ready for you guys to be able to use and to engage within a community. As a part of this, we're also going to give you guys a weekly program that we're going to send to you via the program builder, that if you want to do it, cool. It's kind of a general template, but if you're looking for like, hey, I could use some general programming for my own health and I want to feel what it feels like from a client perspective to get a program to go through it, we can all go through it together. We're going to create a general weekly program. We'll send it out kind of basically every Sunday or early Monday, so we can go through it kind of together. We can discuss it on the discussion forum, talk about it in the weekly webinar if we wanted to. So that way you can experience firsthand what it feels like to get some programming from IoM. We're also going to do a virtual workout of the week together. We're going to meet every Friday. And what we found is that there's a lot of insight, like kind of little nuggets, little gold nuggets that people find by going to this type of session where we work out together. We'll work out together for about 30 minutes. But then we're going to spend some time after that to talk about, well, why did we work out in that particular way? And it's just that justification and that extra insight that can give us extra insight as to how we program and why we might consider certain things. And so it's an optional thing to do, but we wanted to add that to add more value to your experience. There's going to be a syllabus that we'll distribute to you that's going to walk you through kind of everything that you need to be doing to kind of stay on top of things. What we recommend is that you dedicate 5 hours per week to this program. If you can carve out 5 hours per week, you're going to have a successful experience. That's going to give you enough time to go through the education that we have, to start to spend an hour building some programs, trying some things out. And of course, if you spend more than 5 hours, well, you're just going to get more and more out of that experience. So if this is sounding like perhaps a good program for you, but maybe you're busy, we recommend if you can carve out 5 hours, you're probably going to be okay. You'll probably have a good experience. So you're going to be building programs. You have your own account that you can use. And then aside from the discussion forum, there's going to be 3 tests that we're going to have periodically throughout this. And what we're going to have as a passing score to earn your credential. I know it looks kind of high, right? Like 90%, like, geez, man, like, give me a break. The reason why it's 90% is that this is not a university. This is professional to professional. And I'm hoping that you would leave this program with an A, that your clients would expect you to have received an A to earn a certification, to earn a specialization. So that way you can deliver an A-based experience to your clients. And so we're going to make sure that you pass for sure. Just think of 90% as that's the level of confidence that you're going to have leaving this to be able to start to program with, this sort of logic. And then the last bit of details here is, looking to launch August 10th. The retail price of this is going to be $500, $499. And what we're allowing people to do, if they want to pay in full, they can. They would pay in full with a payment of $429. So if they want to pay in advance, they can do so, and that would earn them a discount. Or if they want, they're kind of maybe on the fence about wanting to join this, we'll give you the first month for free, and then you get 2 payments of $224. And that first payment doesn't come out till September 10th, so a month after August. Our website just launched today. You'll see that there's an early bird special that's $249. So we're carving off quite a bit. That's going to be good for a couple days. And then there's an early bird special that we're going to run for the rest of July. That's $299 paid in full, and then 2 payments of $175. Now, here's where we want to make it special for you guys. So because you're viewing this webinar, you've been a part of our community for some time. You've engaged in a mentorship with us or a workshop, what have you. This is your price if you want to take advantage of it. It's $179 pay in full, or 2 payments of $99. And so in order to get that discount, this is literally fresh off the press. I just got this email. And so here's what I'm going to do for you. If you want to pay the $179 in advance, you can. I'm going to type it in as we speak. The $179 offer, the code is all lowercase, AHHPSPAPAY. If you'd like to start this program and get the first month for free, because you're like, yeah, this sounds pretty cool. I'm not sure how busy my life's going to get. Just jump in for free. And we won't charge you till September 10th. And so for the 2 payments of $99, the code for that is AHHPSPA3MO. Okay. So if you want to go this route, this is the code you would enter. If you'd like to go this route, this is the code that you would enter. If you go on the site right now, I think what you'll see is it says $249 or 2 payments of $149. So when you go to the checkout screen and you go to register for this program, insert one of these codes, the code for the offer that you want, and that will give you your special discount. This discount is only going to be used for you guys. So I ask that you don't share this with, let's say, a larger audience. We only have a certain amount of codes that we can use for this. We want to make sure that you get it. So for your colleagues, they could take advantage of a pretty deep discount regardless by signing up now. But with the $249 or even $299 is you're looking at a 40% discount relative to the retail. So we hope our intent is that we wanted to create a specialization in this particular time of the pandemic where, one, it's hard to kind of go anywhere, and 2, it's hard to afford anything right now. Life's uncertain. A lot of people are losing clients. They're losing jobs. And so, as much as we know this is worth, we know this is a couple $1,000 worth specialization. For right now, we're willing to bring it to here because we just want to try to galvanize our community, our industry, get people excited about training and programming, just because, a lot of people need help, both on the career side of things, but then their clients need help too. And if we can offer a higher level service, it just speaks to kind of who we are as a company, that we want to try to create as many different solutions for you guys that you can leverage to make your business better and to make our society better for that matter. So with that being said, our timeline looks like this. So you're going to see a lot of marketing and signups here coming soon. We're launching in August. And what we're going to do is do a second wave that we're going to launch in September. So if you want us to start for the August 10th wave, you can do so right now. If you want to start for the September 28th, hold off. We're going to have, some different links to be able to sign up for that. Our goal is to basically run 2 waves of a level 1 program by the end of the year. That way we can launch level 2. Level 2 is going to now take a look at both 4Q metabolic and 4Q recovery. It's going to be, we're looking at a potential of a 6-month program with that one. And so if you enjoy level 1, you want to keep going, level 2 looks at the metabolic and recovery based programming. So just to be very clear, level 1 is all about mechanical based programming. Level 2 is about both metabolic and recovery based programming. And we're looking to launch level 2 at the start of the new year. And we're making it mandatory that you go through level 1. We understand that maybe you've gone through mentorships in the past and you get maybe perhaps the 4Q mechanical. There's enough nuance, there's enough change, and especially with our program builder, we don't want to leave anybody behind. So we're making it mandatory that no matter what, you have to do level 1 if you want to do level 2. So before I finish this off and I open it up for questions to you guys, I just want to give a heartfelt thanks to our team. We've been working so hard of putting together, this entire program. So to the team that, we have Sarah's at marketing and branding, to DV's our project manager with Mark and Bobby and Johnny and Jan. I mean, these guys are doing so much work on the back end. I'm just so grateful and thankful that we've got a team that is putting forth just tremendous effort to get a lot of what we're trying to do right now and get it out to the industry. To our contributors who are helping us develop a lot of the curriculum with this, we've got Greg out of UBC, Brandon, a PhD out of Stanford, Gigi, she's getting her PhD. She's going to be helping us a lot with, vetting the science behind a lot of the programming that we're doing, as well as women's health with Chantel. Big thanks to Ryan and Todd, Brett, and Gio. And then our support team, Steve, Maria, Quentin, Trevor, and Dawn. These guys work so much on the back end to help a lot of this get done. So just wanted to give a big thanks to these guys. And of course, a huge thanks to you for spending the time hanging out with us here today. So I'll leave it to some questions or thoughts that you guys may have before I leave you.
As always, DP, thanks. As you guys are perhaps formulating some thoughts, I just want to echo that and say thank you. For us, we talk about the 20X. For those that have been to our live mentorships, we talk about this idea of community. And, what I would say is the culture is one that is, like all biology, is self-organizing. And so, to the best of our ability, we couldn't create culture. It's created from within, so to speak. And so, what our intentions are, as DP alluded to, was to bring together, some professional minds where heads and hearts are in the right place, and having the agency and the kind of the community built, and then within that, allowing the conditions to be right for culture to emerge. And for us, that's really important. And so, for your time spent today, we're going to do this webinar again this afternoon. We did a couple, like I said, 2 weeks ago. This all is very meaningful for us, for the community to come together and to be able to share the idea of thinking about health and performance on the same level. And for those that we serve, I do believe that they will be better for it, and we can all feel connected in our own way through this virtual medium. So if there are no other questions, we can probably leave it at that. If there are any questions, absolutely, we've got a couple minutes here, but we do appreciate your time. And DP, thank you as always. And we'll be in touch with next steps. If you want to engage, we'll certainly go down that road of helping you, register and go through the process. And for those, that, you have got more questions, let us know. We're here to serve and we're here to help. I think that's it. If there's no other questions, good to see your smiling face, Lisa.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Perfect. So we'll be in touch, I guess. I think that's it for now. Tom, drive safe. Don't get in an accident, buddy. All right. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Cheers.